Good morning. How are you today? Welcome to this very special occasion. My name is Kenneth Chan, President of the Hong Kong Association for European Studies and also one of the associate professors at the Department of Government and International Studies at Hong Kong Baptist University. Today we have a very big gathering with not only colleagues and students at HKBU, but also joining us via Zoom from different parts of the world, including some very notable, respectable overseas academics as well. And I understand that the non-HKBU audience account for about 1/4 of the crowd this morning. It has nothing to do with myself, but certainly everything to do with our guest of honor this morning. And let me briefly introduce our guest of honor. Our speaker this morning is the newly arrived EU office head to Hong Kong and Macau, Ambassador Thomas Gnocchi. Tom, if I may go by first name. We met already a couple of times since your arrival in September, or rather mid-August this year. He has a very interesting and rich background. You can tell from his name, he is partly Italian, but also partly English. And he speaks French and French colleagues, Chinese as well, together, and some Serbian. Because Tom has been posted to China before joining Hong Kong, before joining us in Hong Kong twice, at least in Beijing. And he also served in Vietnam for the EU, of course. Before joining us, he was deputy head of division for Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific, and also deputy head of division for Afghanistan and Pakistan. He's definitely not a stranger to this part of the world, because in his very rich and successful diplomatic career, he has been able to look after areas including Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, East Timor, and of course, Vietnam. Back in Europe, he was serving as well as deputy head of office and head of the political, economic, and European integration section at the EU office in Kosovo between 2012 and 2017, and as head of the political and information section at the delegation of the EU to Serbia between 2008 and 2012. Tom was educated at the London School of Economics, Yale University, and Tianjin University of the People's Republic of China. I know that these times or these days it's very trendy for diplomats to give speeches in Mandarin, but I leave it to him to decide how he would like to share his thoughts and his experience with us this morning. I understand that the brief talk to begin with will be very much focusing, if I may just summarize it in my own terms, EU diplomacy, the what's, hows, and the whys in general. I'm sure here in Hong Kong, we are naturally very curious about EU's relations with Hong Kong, and of course, with respect to China, EU-China relations. Some of you might also like to bring in the US factor, the transatlantic dimensions as well. So it's a broad church, I understand that. The good thing is, I can tell you for sure, Tom and colleagues here from the European Union office in Hong Kong, for us here at Baptist University, the EU is no longer an unidentified political object. We do know something about the EU, do know a lot about the EU, do care about the developments of the EU. And for our friends in general, I want to just say a few words as well about the, if I may, some housekeeping rules as well. I very much hope that we'll have a very fruitful, engaging talk and discussion this morning. So if I may just put it up front, I very much hope that the whole event would be off the record so that we can all enjoy this morning together. And after this short talk, and I would invite students, colleagues here in front of us, and also those joining us via Zoom to put their questions, and we'll have a discussion till about 10-ish this morning. Tom and his colleagues have, of course, a very busy schedule, especially knowing that today in Hong Kong, we also have the policy address given by the government, the chief executive as well. So we will have a very busy day today as well. Now, without much ado, Would you, colleagues and students and friends, join us to welcome Ambassador Thomas Gnocchi, please. Thank you. We'll do the elbow.
Can I take my mask off when I speak?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kenneth, for that very comprehensive introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here to address you here in person, but also those of you following through Zoom, and to have the chance to speak to you about the European Union in general, the European Union's role in the world, the role of the European Union in Hong Kong as well, the role of our office. I think there are a number of different issues I wanted to address, and I know I wanted to, well, first of all, to thank Kenneth for this initiative. I think this is really something it's a good teaming up of efforts. I know you've done a lot of work here at the university, but also in your personal research, you've done a lot of work which is relevant to the topics I'm going to mention in my talk. Just to mention a number of papers you've written: Power Through Trade, Opportunities and Constraints of the European Union's Norm Entrepreneurship, the Case of Hong Kong. Then another topic: Towards a Partnership for Global Norm Diffusion, the Strategic Importance of Hong Kong in EU-China Relations. I think I look forward to reading those papers. I think they sound very interesting. So I think there's a lot of connections that can be made between our respective work. You introduced my background, and perhaps this is the first point that I have quite a bit of experience on with different countries in Asia, and so in the Q&A, I would be happy to come back to any of the points that Kenneth raised. In terms of also more recently, my most recent posting was in two postings were in the Balkans. So if any of you are interested in enlargement policy of the European Union, this is something I won't talk about, but I think I'd be happy to in the Q&A if this were to come up. I was going to talk a little bit in general about the European Union, but I think you are all quite familiar with the general aspects of the European Union, so I shouldn't really dwell too much on that. Maybe just to highlight that the basis of the European Union and the European project is certain values, and that the European Union is something that is not just an economic project. It's not just an economic integration project, but it is something that has at its basis certain values, and those are values of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and human rights. And this I think is relevant in our work across the world, because these are values which we try and project across the world, and it forms the basis of our foreign policy. I think this is the first I think important point to make. Another one is that the European project very much is a very still quite a novel construct. It is something that is trying to be, there are aspects of it which are trying to be replicated in other parts of the world. In Asia, ASEAN comes to mind, and we do a lot of work with ASEAN. Again, I can go deeper into that if people want. But one specific issue is that the European project is based on shared sovereignty. This is another very basic characteristic of the European project, which is you don't really see much in other parts of the world, and is something which can also be sometimes is contested, but we strongly believe that this is one of the reasons why behind why the European integration project model is so effective and works, because there's this shared sovereignty, which makes it different, for example, to what you see in ASEAN. So that's in terms of a general introduction. I wanted to stress those 2 points about the European Union. Coming to more closely to what the EU foreign policy, and here we've seen a lot of developments over the recent years, and this is the part, obviously, of the European Union that I work in. And here we have the part of the European Union that employs me is called the European External Action Service. And here you could define this in a way as the Foreign Ministry of Europe, even though it's not called that way, but that's effectively what it is. So the EEAS, and this was introduced by the Lisbon Treaty some 11 years ago, and I think this represented a big step ahead in terms of the European Union's ability to carry out its foreign policy. Foreign policy is something which you can say in a way that there are the 27 member states plus an additional actor, which is the European Union. So there's a common foreign and security policy. Here, the EEAS, is actually, in fact, not only a foreign ministry, but is also a defense ministry. And the head of the EEAS is the High Representative and Vice President of the European Commission. He has 2 roles, Josep Borrell. He also, not only he chairs the Foreign Affairs Council, where the foreign ministers of the 27 ministers of foreign affairs gather, but he also chairs a meeting of defense ministers of the European Union. And here, this is one of the areas which has seen the most growth, which is the security issues and on defense issues. Here, there's been a lot of developments, and I've been, over the past few years, I've been working on this area in particular, on issues of enhancing security cooperation with a number of Asian countries. Again, I can, if there is interest in the Q&A, I can come back to this particular topic. I think this is an area where it's not so well known what the European Union is doing in this area, but it's one of the areas where there's most I think quite a lot of developments happening. So I think it's something to watch carefully. In terms of diplomatic service, as I said before, we try and project certain values. And I think an important aspect is our support um, for multilateralism and the multilateral world order. This is something that's at the very heart of what we do with different countries around the world, and we think that this is really something that's important to solve many of the world's problems. And obviously, the United Nations is something which is central to these efforts. So our cooperation and support to the United Nations is important. If I can turn to one big topic, which is very, I think, relevant um, these days, and that is COVID. Obviously, the world is very, very different and will emerge from the COVID crisis looking very different to what it was before. And obviously, we have an ongoing public health and medical crisis, which is still very much affecting Europe in a way much more than in Asia. But we already have, and we will have an economic problem to deal with, and so the European Union is very much behind both aspects. In terms of the medical response, the European Union was, I think, instrumental in setting up the COVAX initiative, and was able to convene 40 countries and raised 16 billion in terms of issues to thank you to enhance the testing, the treatment, and the research on vaccines. So this was fairly early on in the crisis, and I think it's also useful to recall that the European Union was involved in sending medical equipment to many countries around the world, including to China at the very beginning of the crisis. There were tons of equipment being sent to China, but in the earlier part of this year, and this sometimes gets forgotten. So I think it's useful to recall this. But the EU is obviously Then we were involved in the repatriation, and this is something I was working on as well. Kenneth mentioned that I was working on Australia and New Zealand. We had tens of thousands of European tourists stuck in many countries around the world, and we were involved in repatriating them. And so there were European Union flights. Again, this is something that's not really well known, but there were big efforts being undertaken in that area. On the economic front, I think this is something which is ongoing at the moment, but the EU has been mobilizing unprecedented amounts of funding to respond to the economic aspect of COVID. And there is a package of 750 billion euros that's been put together for the economic package, Next Generation EU, it's called. And so this will be then mobilized in the coming months and years. And here I would like to touch on two more general issues, which are really priorities at the moment for the European Union, and I think are very relevant in our work around the world. The first of these is climate change, and here the European Union is really, I'd say one of the pioneers in terms of the fight against climate change. The European Union has committed to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030, and to become climate neutral by 2050. A number of other countries have followed, including countries in Asia, um, Japan and South Korea. Maybe we'll hear about Hong Kong soon in this regard. China has made an announcement of 2060, and this is very, very much welcome, because I think working this is one of the areas we really need to cooperate as partners with China, uh, which is the climate change, because we have 7% of global emissions. So if the European Union is the perfect student in this area, it won't make any difference if others don't follow. And here we very much hope and in fact welcome already the announcement that has been made by former Vice President, President-elect Biden, who announced that that the US would be rejoining the Paris Agreement. This is really, really welcome for us, and because this is if COVID is a major crisis, I think climate change is an even bigger crisis that's looming. So it's important to have everyone, and have the US is obviously a big player there as well. Another area I'd like to talk about, which is very, I think, very important, is the digital sector. This is something which will define our economies in the future. And this is an area which the European Union is involved in different aspects. And as Kenneth's research papers indicate, the European Union is very much a normative power. So a lot of our work will go into defining a rule book for the digital economy and digital society. And so a lot of work is being put there. The first area is our relationships with online platforms, which have huge economic power and influence. And there is really a need to get this relationship right. Just to mention two areas, and that is hate speech and terrorism, which really need to be addressed when it comes to online platforms. There is also obviously a connection to elections in this regard. And here we are, there's a number of reforms we are carrying out within what we call Digital Service Act, but in terms of the gatekeeper platforms, we're also going to propose a Digital Markets Act to ensure fair competition and innovation. But also we will be, and this is in fact coming tomorrow, there is a Digital Data Governance Act, which is about the transfer of data, and this will be announced tomorrow by the European Commission. So there's really a lot of work being done in this area, and I think it's work which is also very relevant here in Hong Kong. Another area is data protection. You probably have all heard about the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is very much becoming a kind of standard that other parts of the world draw inspiration from. And here there's what I spoke about in terms of the Data Governance Act is more within the European Union, but something we would like to see addressed is the international transfer of data. This is a very important area. And finally, I think a big topic at the moment is the issue of the fair taxation for the digital economy. A few years ago, it was only Europe talking about this, and there was some criticism against Europe for addressing this topic. But I think now other parts of the world, including in the US, there's a debate about this, that this should be addressed. And we hope that a consensual solution will be found, and we want this to be found within the OECD and the G20. But if there's no solution, the European Union will act on its own, because we feel it's only fair that big companies in the digital economy pay a fair share in terms of taxation. If I can turn to another topic, which is that of human rights. I think this is something very relevant in our work in Hong Kong, but across the world, and this has many different aspects. And again, we can get into this in the Q&A. And here our work goes from supporting civil society to highlighting the fight against discrimination in all areas, but also the support for democratic processes. You may know that we have election observation missions in many countries. This is, I think, one of the pillars of our work in the area of human rights and democracy. And it's, I think, defines a lot of what we do in terms of human rights. I'm not sure, I won't be too much longer. I just wanted to touch on perhaps two before saying a bit more on Hong Kong, just to touch on two relationships which are very important, are crucial to the European Union. The first is China, and here this is something I think I would say it's getting our relations with China right is a big challenge for the European Union. And it has been evolving as China is changing, and changing very dramatically, I would say. Also, our relationship has had to change. And here we've come to realize that we should see China in different ways. And you can't have a kind of just a single relationship with China, but China is, first of all, we want to see China as a partner. I mentioned the area of climate change. You know, we need to have a sort of partnership with China, not only climate change, but other global challenges around the world. But China is also an economic competitor. Increasingly, you know, we are seeing that in the economic field we are competing, but also, and this is maybe a new element, seeing China as what we call a systemic rival. And here, you know, I think it comes down to a very different ways of looking at society and looking at governance. And so I think that is the sort of how we define that aspect of the relationship. So here it's obviously a very intense relationship we have with China. We have dozens of different dialogues in many areas. And but something I'd like to touch on briefly is, or mention, is the ongoing negotiations which we have on the a comprehensive agreement on investment. These are ongoing negotiations, and we believe it's very important to finalize them. And there is a joint objective in concluding these negotiations by the end of the year. The other obviously big relationship is that with the United States. And here I already touched on this with President-elect Biden coming in. I think there's a hope that we can have again in the US, which is I have to say is a long-standing partner of the European Union for obvious reasons. We have shared cultural and historical background, and is in fact just in terms of trade, um, the bilateral trade between the EU and the US is over 1 trillion euros per year. So you have 3 billion euros per day in trade between the two. This was obviously pre-COVID. It's come down a little bit, but just to show you how intense that relationship is. And we hope that I mentioned climate change and the Paris Agreement, but there are many other areas which we hope we can again start working with the US on. WTO reform, WHO, which is very relevant these days with COVID, but also things which we've been, in terms of our foreign policy, we've been very attached to. The nuclear agreement with Iran is one of them, where the current administration has pulled out of. So we're hoping really to have a reliable partner in the US in terms of tackling the different challenges that we have, which are growing more and more each day. But I think we should also be aware that a lot of the attention of the new administration will be on domestic issues. So I think it would be a mistake to really rely too much on now linking up with the United States in terms of solving many of these things. We hope they will be an important partner, but I think we also need to be bear this in mind as well. Maybe perhaps turning to Hong Kong, and this is the last part of my introduction before we turn to Q&A. I think we have I think intense relations with Hong Kong. We've established an office here since 1993. We have relations in many different areas. Just to quote a few figures, we have 1,600 European companies that are present in Hong Kong, and this is one of the things I was surprised about, at the size of the European business community in Hong Kong. We have tens of thousands of European citizens, not only in the business world, but in academia, in civil society, in culture, in arts. This is really, and these are areas where we would really like to take relations forward in terms of between the EU and Hong Kong, increasing people-to-people exchanges, academic exchanges, cultural contacts. Here we have 16 of our member states are present with their consulates general, and we want to work very, very closely with them. In terms of issues to bring forward, we obviously have a lot in the trade and economic and financial sector. There are obviously many issues to discuss with Hong Kong. But as I said before, we would want to bring forward also other types of cooperation, whether it's on climate change. Hong Kong is not such a big emitter because of its size, but I think it's important to have such a dialogue. Hong Kong, for example, is very advanced on green finance, so that's the sort of topic we can take forward with Hong Kong. But then also having other areas of cooperation. We do an annual seminar on trafficking, and this is an important area of cooperation. Discrimination issues. I think this is, as I said, these are at the heart of our foreign policy, and it would be good to take these forward with Hong Kong as well. I think I'll end there.